Welcome. So glad you looked us up again. I am Kevin, or RevKev, and this is RevKevHumanMe. Good to have you here. On this YouTube channel, we study the game of life, not the Milton Bradley game. We also talk about improving as human beings. You could very well say we are a home makeover channel. The game of life, the home makeover channel. We address 4 key relationships found in the Bible: relationships with God, relationship with self, relationship with our neighbor, and relationship with our world. The foundation of the videos thus far is Jesus. Jesus who faced off against the devil in Mark chapter 1, Matthew chapter 4, and Luke chapter 4. In this gospel story, Jesus teaches all listeners how to pick up their agency, our personal control over a situation like temptation. Last week, I shared a personal story from about 25 years ago, the time frame when I began exploring angelology, or more specifically, demons. Now, I didn't fill in all the gaps for you on purpose. But again, I pray you understand that I do not support that we are to look for fights, stirring up demons. So while I was creating last week's videos, an invisible entity grabbed my finger because it was not happy that I was sharing my story. It was preying on my nervousness and insecurities, but it didn't work. I cannot fully reenact what happened. My pinky finger moved. It twitched about 100 times an hour faster than I can do here. And it wasn't cold and it wasn't hot. It was, in other words, a senseless shiver, or was it? So I stopped production and I erased the video and I just started again. So I'm not going to sensationalize the work of the devil. So let me put it this way. You can believe me or not, I know that one day I will stand before Christ and share the same testimony. Twice in the past week, individuals came to me for assistance with pokies. It's phenomena that is happening all around us, and it's meant to confuse you and keep you off balance from knowing your joy complete, in Jesus' own words, John 15, verse 11. Because of the negative experiences in my home 25 years ago, I pursued answers to defend my family. My research specifically on the topic of demons oppressing Christians, Christian children. It led me to Pontus. I've only partially laced the story of Pontus throughout the past 35 videos. I've been leading up to these moments, right? Pontus is the eccentric, dangerous desert father. His full name, Evagrius of Pontus. So I'm switching to calling Evagrius of Pontus just Pontus. Pontus models the teachings of Jesus roughly 300 years after Jesus, the true master or the true teacher, dies, resurrects, and ascends to be with the Father. As mentioned before, and I will mention it again, because something so blatant, so obvious in the Bible should not be lost on the church of the 21st century. That's correct. I'm not seeing Jesus' comprehensive points about overcoming temptation as depicted in the Gospels of Matthew, Mark, and Luke in the 21st century. It is truly a shame because the account of Jesus battling Satan in the wild lays the foundation of the very first step program. I believe it to be that important. A stepping program that is 2,000 years older than the Alcoholics Anonymous program, the 12-step program. And Pontus's step program is not only a program, it's 8 thoughts. And I'm finished with the foundation of the lessons for the moment. I want to get into now the practices of Pontus, our eccentric desert monk. Most people are familiar with the 7 deadly sins of the 6th century. Pope Gregory the Great is credited for the 7 deadly sins. Most people I meet are unaware of the actual origin of this sinister list of 7. As mentioned over the course of these videos, the origin of the 7 deadly sins belongs to a lesser-known monk, his name Pontus, and he lived in the 4th century. So I'm trying to drive home some of this information for you. I'm trying to be persuasive. Pontus wrote the original list before his death in 399. He put the list into practice. That prescription is the framework of the 7 deadly sins. Pope Gregory alters the original list conceived by Pontus. Pontus's list has been translated into English. The small book is called Talking Back. It's not expensive. It's found on Amazon. The title of his list translates Talking Back. Talking Back. So, of course, this raises the question, who was Pontus talking back to? Well, it's a little disturbing. In Pontus's primitive understanding, he was being attacked and thwarted by demons. Now, before you flame me, give a guy a chance to explain. Before you change the channel, understand that Pontus lived in a primitive age, the 4th century. He's very likely to not have 100% accuracy in his thinking. I live in the 21st century, and I can see that I'm not 100% perfect either. Please believe me when I say Pontus found out some important things and had a true handle on the human condition. He was a man before his time. His 8 deadly thoughts will help us in our pursuit of knowing God. Do you want to find out what Pontus was up to? What he was thinking? And could Pontus's research, his list, help us with our personal issue called sin? I really think so. This is a question about the very quality of our lives, like actually knowing victory in our lives today, not just falling down in sin and shameful practices only to fall back on God's grace. Don't get me wrong. I believe in God's grace first and foremost. We can actually add nothing to our actual salvation. I'm talking about winning in this life, not just wistfully wishing the shame and suffering to end without a plan in place. And like I mentioned months ago, I have no intention of following Jesus or Pontus out to the physical desert unless the Lord directly says go to the desert. And as I mentioned over the past months, Jesus left a template what to expect in our personal struggle with temptation, the trap set up by a very unoriginal devil. So friends, we can learn from an eccentric monk who lived in the 4th century. He was a church leader, a monk, so he was single, and he left his leadership role in the city, in the monastery. He was a leader, he had his flock, but as a devout follower of Jesus Christ, he enlisted himself, he volunteered to live in the wild. According to manuscripts, one critical circumstance in particular led Pontus into the desert. Pontus confessed that he fell into love or lust, whatever have you, with a married woman in his congregation. He began to entertain thoughts. Again, he took a vow, so whether married or not, he was breaking his vow to the Lord. The married woman wasn't complicit. She didn't even know her church leader was enamored with her. But all of that didn't matter for Pontus. He was convicted by his lack of strength. He found himself in a mental breakdown. Monks were students of the Bible. Surely Pontus had read Jeremiah 25, verses 34 to 37. Wail, you shepherds, and cry out, roll in ashes, you lords of the flock, for the days of your slaughter have come, and your dispersions. And you shall fall like a choice vessel. Flight shall fail the shepherds, and there shall be no escape for the lords of the flock. Hark, the cry of the shepherds, and the wail of the lords of the flock, for the Lord is despoiling their pasture. And the peaceful folds are devastated because of the fierce anger of the Lord. So this monk knew what the Lord expected from leaders within the church, and he was a broken man. He didn't want to rouse the fierce anger of the Lord. It appears from his confessions that Pontus moved into the desert to gain a grip on his life and his ministry. And he also knew how inappropriate it was to have sexual thoughts for a woman, let alone to fall for a married woman. I know what you are thinking. Whether he meant to follow up on it or not, he knew he was on a slippery slope. He had a lot of influence over his congregation. And you've heard about the slippery slope of pastors, having intimacy with their parishioners or even leading a second life. We hear about it time and time again, and yet it still happens. Based on Pontus' confessions, he only saw this congregant from afar. The relationship was born in his head, and yet he knew he could not stay there because he might teeter into doing something foolish. So he removed himself. Pontus fell for her in his mind and heart, and that was enough for him. He was like, what is wrong with me? You may think he overreacted. But looking back to John 15, where Jesus is teaching us about our body, soul, and spirit, a sanctuary, a temple, and a sacred place set apart for the Lord, Pontus felt deep resonating shame, a man in his leadership position, smitten by lust, and he realized his overall weakness. Pontus heads to the deserts of Egypt to get in tune with the vine. I will have hit a home run with you if you leave today with one critical thought. These men and women weren't running from the fight. They were running to the action. So I will speak for myself, but I know I have been judgmental about monks and nuns and priests because they have gone to the monastery and to hide from the world. So it's rather judgmental thinking. But these 4th century monks, they were running to the action. That is what the modern world is confused about these ancient men and women. They go to the battle lines because that is where Jesus fought his demon in the wilderness in Mark chapter 1. No comforts of home, these devout desert fathers and mothers pursued God in the 3rd and 4th centuries, a lot harder than I do in my world full of creature comforts. These heroes lived rough and in scarcity near the Nile River in Egypt, and I mean they gathered just to live. My point is this. Like the highly motivated desert folk, we want to improve our lives, but we don't necessarily want to put our entire life on hold to do it. At least I don't. I don't think we have to shed ourselves of our entire life to be more godly. I don't think you have to move to the desert to find God. I think you can find God here and now, in a penthouse, in a shelter, living on a person's couch, in a jail cell, lying on a hospital bed, or lying on a comfortable beach. There may still be a sentiment in the modern Christian community that people who join religious orders are on the run, hiding, retreating from the real world. I can assure you that Pontus and the desert ascetics felt they were in the arena. They were in the center of where the spiritual and physical met together. After investing some time reading about their desert experience, I'm confident that many of these desert monks thought they were personally assisting God. Desert monks were attempting to help fortify the front lines before the demons could make their ways to the cities. And we could argue that the desert monks themselves were at times compelled to the desert because they did not feel significant enough, did not feel significant in their monasteries. But these are subjects for another day. See, we all question our purpose and our significance. It is the underlying attack of the devil upon our Lord in Matthew 4 and Luke 4. But I digress. I tend to do that when I'm excited about a subject. Pontus himself, he felt the 8 consistent thoughts, as he called them, were sent by the devil, like a visitation to the devout, to discourage them and distract them, defeat them, and for them to retreat back to the city. I want to be so clear that I don't think that the thoughts themselves are demons, but some vices do become uncontrollable giants in our lives. Some addictions basically mock us because we run out of answers to defend against what happens, what appears to be perfect trappings. Before we get too critical, too judgmental about these primitive men and women who wanted to fortify the arms of God, we have to appreciate that they were reading Scripture literally. Jesus fought the devil in the desert. They read Ephesians 6, verse 12. For our struggle is not against enemies of blood and flesh, but against the rulers, against the authorities, against the cosmic powers of this present darkness, against the spiritual forces of evil in the heavenly places. The desert monks are reading that literally. We can hardly blame them for heading out to the desert to aid and support to the Lord. On the cross, Jesus submits himself to death. In the wilderness, Jesus goes to work. He pins his ears back. In Ephesians 6, verse 12, it mentions the cosmic forces in this present darkness. A cosmic struggle is taking place for our heart and souls and mind, and Jesus said so. And in John 15, verse 11, he says our joy will be complete, but it's at risk by this present darkness. Pontus' list of 8 deadly thoughts reads like this: gluttony, lust, greed, sadness, anger, sloth, vainglory, and pride. The first 3 deadly thoughts talk about our physical appetites. And that is where we begin. In the desert account, the devil tempts Jesus to make stones bread. It's a temptation of appetite. The Bible encourages us to ask, what are our temptations? What are our earthly material appetites? These things that cause worry, angst, and anxiety for us. These thoughts that we can afford to fuel, or they become sin. We can live more at peace when we understand how we think and negotiate in bad faith with ourselves. You are more than welcome and encouraged to go back and look at earlier videos to help you find your footing with the material that I'm sharing. If you find the content helpful, think about subscribing and tapping the notification bell next to subscribe. It is entirely free, but is also really helpful to me because it helps transmit the message to a hurting world. Feel free to like, share, comment, and we will see you again next time as we face our deadly thoughts of gluttony. Peace.
Now is the best time to start.
Not tomorrow. Not next week.
Not until next month.
Not next year.
You have to start
right now.
So get out there and chase your dreams. Find adventure. Fall in love. Take risks.
Because trust me,
it'll be worth it, I promise.